The scream tore through the boarding house at 3 in the morning, jolting every soul awake within a mile of Winnemucca's Main Street. And Nathan Emerson nearly fell off his bed reaching for his revolver before he realized the sound came from the room next door. His heart hammered against his ribs as he pressed his ear to the thin wall, listening for signs of an intruder or attack. But all he heard was ragged breathing and quiet sobbing that made something in his chest twist painfully. He had arrived in this Nevada town just yesterday, dusty and tired from driving cattle north from California. And now he stood barefoot in his union suit wondering if he should knock on a stranger's door in the dead of night. The sobbing continued, punctuated by whispered words he could not quite make out, and Nathan found himself in the hallway before he had fully decided to move. The floorboards creaked under his weight as he approached the door marked with a tarnished brass number 4. He raised his knuckles to knock, hesitated, then rapped gently 3 times. "Miss, are you all right in there?" The crying stopped abruptly. Silence stretched for several heartbeats before a shaky voice answered. "I'm fine. Please go back to bed." Nathan should have listened. A decent man would have returned to his room and minded his own business, but something in that voice, the tremor of barely controlled fear, kept his feet planted in the hallway. "Begging your pardon, miss, but you don't sound fine. That scream would have woken the dead." More silence. Then the soft shuffle of feet approaching the door. When it cracked open, Nathan found himself looking into the palest blue eyes he had ever seen, set in a face that might have been carved from alabaster if not for the flush of distress coloring her cheeks. Dark hair tumbled over her shoulders in disarray, and she clutched a shawl around her nightgown with white-knuckled hands. "I apologize for disturbing everyone," she said, her voice steadier now but still threaded with exhaustion. "I have night terrors. They've plagued me since childhood." "I should have warned the proprietor." Nathan felt his concern deepen rather than ease. The shadows under her eyes spoke of many sleepless nights, and the way she swayed slightly suggested she was near the end of her endurance. "How often do they come?" "Every night." She said it matter-of-factly as if discussing the weather, but Nathan saw the resignation in her expression. "Sometimes multiple times. I've tried every remedy the doctors suggest. Nothing helps. That's no way to live." The words came out before he could stop them, and he saw her eyes flash with something like defiance. "I manage." She started to close the door, but Nathan caught it gently. "Wait. I didn't mean any offense. My name is Nathan Emerson. I'm a cattleman from California. Just passing through on my way to check on some property my uncle left me north of here." He was not sure why he was introducing himself at 3 in the morning to a terrified woman in her nightclothes, but the words kept coming. "If you have these terrors every night, you must wake up exhausted. How do you function?" Her expression softened slightly, though wariness remained. "Poorly, if I'm being honest. I'm Wilhelmina Harper. I came to Winnemucca 3 weeks ago to work as a schoolteacher, but I'm afraid I've been struggling. The children deserve better than someone who can barely keep her eyes open during lessons." The hallway suddenly felt too exposed, too public for this conversation. Nathan glanced toward the stairs, then back at her. "I know we just met, and this is going to sound strange, but would you like some company? Just to talk, I mean. Sometimes having another person nearby helps with bad dreams." Wilhelmina studied him for a long moment, and Nathan tried to look as unthreatening as possible, which was challenging given he stood over 6 feet tall with shoulders broadened by years of ranch work. Finally, she shook her head. "That would not be proper. Besides, you need your rest." "I've already ruined enough sleep for one night." "I'm a light sleeper anyway," Nathan lied. "And I've got nowhere to be tomorrow except checking in with the land office. Please, let me help. even if it's just sitting in the hallway outside your door so you know someone's keeping watch. Something in her eyes cracked then, a dam breaking under too much pressure. You don't know what you're offering. The dreams are terrible. I thrash about and scream, and sometimes I don't even know where I am when I wake up. It frightens people. Nathan felt a surge of protectiveness so strong it surprised him. He barely knew this woman, had spoken to her for all of 5 minutes, yet he found himself wanting to shield her from whatever demons haunted her sleep. "Then I'll guard your dreams," he said simply. "However long you're in Winnemucca, I'll make sure you're not alone when the terrors come." Wilhelmina's eyes filled with tears, and she pressed a hand to her mouth. "Why would you do that for a stranger?" "Because everyone deserves to feel safe, especially when they're sleeping." Nathan kept his voice gentle. "And maybe because I know what it's like to be alone when you're scared. Will you let me help?" She studied him for another long moment, then nodded slowly. "I'll leave my door open a crack. You can sit in the hallway if you truly don't mind." "But Nathan, I'm warning you now, it's not pleasant to witness." He settled himself against the wall across from her door, his blanket wrapped around his shoulders and his back pressed to the faded wallpaper. Through the narrow opening, he could see Wilhelmina climb back into bed, her movements hesitant and careful, as if she dreaded returning to sleep. The lamp on her bedside table cast a warm glow across her profile, highlighting the delicate line of her jaw and the curve of her neck. "Tell me about these dreams," Nathan said quietly. "What do you see?" Wilhelmina was silent for so long he thought she might not answer. Then her voice drifted through the darkness, soft and distant. "Fire. I see fire consuming everything. I'm a child again, and I'm trapped in a burning building. The smoke chokes me and the heat blisters my skin, and I know I'm going to die. Sometimes I see faces in the flames, people I love being consumed. My parents, my younger brother, they're screaming for help, but I can't reach them." Nathan's chest tightened. "Did you lose family in a fire?" "When I was 8 years old. Our farmhouse in Ohio caught fire during the night. My parents got me out and my father went back for my brother Timothy. He was only 5. Neither of them came out again." Her voice remained steady, but Nathan could hear the grief beneath the words, old but never fully healed. "I was raised by my aunt after that. She did her best, but the dreams started that very night and they've never stopped. I'm sorry." The words felt inadequate, but Nathan meant them with his whole heart. No child should have to carry that. "I'm not a child anymore. I'm 23 years old, and I should have found a way to move past this by now. Instead, I'm still waking up screaming like a frightened little girl." Nathan shifted against the wall, trying to find a more comfortable position. "Grief doesn't follow a schedule, Wilhelmina, and trauma has a way of embedding itself deep. You survived something terrible. The fact that it still affects you doesn't make you weak. Most people don't see it that way. They think I'm hysterical or attention-seeking. One doctor suggested I needed to be committed to an asylum for my own good." Bitterness crept into her tone. "That's part of why I came west. I thought a fresh start might help, somewhere nobody knew about my problems. But the dreams followed me, of course. They always do." "Well, now somebody knows, and I don't think you're hysterical." Nathan found himself smiling despite the heavy conversation. "Exhausted, maybe, dealing with something difficult, absolutely, but not crazy." He heard the rustle of sheets as she turned toward the door. "You're very kind, Nathan Emerson. Kinder than you probably should be to a strange woman who wakes you up screaming. My mother raised me to help people when I can, and I meant what I said. However long you need someone to keep watch, I'm here." They talked through the remainder of the night, voices low to avoid waking other boarders. Wilhelmina told him about her students, 7 children ranging from ages 6 to 14 who deserved a teacher capable of focusing on their lessons. She spoke about how she loved seeing their faces light up when they mastered a new concept, how teaching was the one thing that made her feel useful despite her affliction. Nathan shared stories about life on his uncle's ranch, about the satisfaction of working with cattle and horses, about the vast spaces of the West that made a man feel both insignificant and infinite at the same time. As dawn light began creeping through the window, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, Nathan realized Wilhelmina had not had another episode. She had dozed off sometime around 4:30, and though he had seen her stir restlessly a few times, no more screams had torn through the boarding house. He watched her sleep for a moment, noting how the tension had eased from her features, making her look younger and more peaceful than she had when first opening her door. His back ached from sitting on the hard floor all night, and his eyes burned with exhaustion, but Nathan felt oddly satisfied. He had helped someone. That had to count for something. He was stretching his stiff muscles when Wilhelmina's eyes fluttered open. For a moment, confusion clouded her expression, then memory returned and she sat up quickly. "You stayed all night. I said I would, but you must be exhausted." "Nathan, you can't sacrifice your own rest for me every night. That's not sustainable." Nathan stood, his joints popping in protest. "Let me worry about that. How do you feel?" Wilhelmina considered the question, her hand moving unconsciously to her throat. "Better than usual, actually. I don't remember having any more dreams after we talked. That's rare for me. Then it was worth it." Nathan gathered his blanket, suddenly aware that he stood in the hallway in his underclothes talking to a woman he had met hours ago. "I should get dressed. But Wilhelmina, I meant what I said. Tonight, tomorrow night, however long you're here, I'll keep watch if you want me to." Something shifted in her expression, a cautious hope that broke Nathan's heart even as it made him determined to protect it. "I can't ask that of you. You're not asking, I'm offering." He met her eyes steadily. "Let me help, please." She bit her lip, clearly torn between pride and desperation. Finally, she nodded. "One more night. If it helps again, we can discuss making it a regular arrangement, but Nathan, you have to promise me something. Anything. If this becomes too much, if you find someone or something that needs your attention more than a damaged schoolteacher's nightmares, you'll tell me honestly. I don't want to be a burden." Nathan wanted to tell her she could never be a burden, that somehow in the space of a few hours she had become important to him in a way he did not fully understand, but that would sound insane. Instead, he simply nodded. "I promise. But Wilhelmina, you're not damaged. You're surviving." The smile she gave him was small but genuine, and it transformed her entire face. Nathan found himself smiling back, feeling something warm unfurl in his chest that had nothing to do with the rising sun streaming through the window behind him. The town of Winnemucca stretched along the Humboldt River in a landscape that seemed to exist in shades of brown and gold, with sagebrush rolling off toward distant mountains that looked purple in the morning light. The year was 1884, and the town had grown from a small trading post to a bustling community thanks to the railroad and the mining operations in the surrounding areas. Nathan made his way down to the land office after breakfast, his mind only partially on the property his uncle had left him. The land agent, a thin man with spectacles and ink-stained fingers, pulled out a thick folder of documents. "The property is about 15 miles north of here, near the Quinn River. Your uncle ran cattle on it for 20 years before he passed. It's good grazing land, plenty of water, though you're somewhat isolated out there. The ranch house needs work, but the bones are solid." Nathan studied the survey maps and deeds, trying to focus on acreage and water rights when his thoughts kept drifting back to a pale-eyed woman with shadows under her eyes. "I'll need to ride out and see it for myself. How long would you say the repairs might take? Depends on how much you do yourself versus hiring help. A month if you work steady, maybe 2 if you want to do it right. The agent pushed the papers across his desk. Your uncle was a good man, kept to himself mostly, but he was honest and fair in his dealings. You planning to settle here permanent-like or just passing through? I wasn't sure when I arrived, Nathan admitted, but I'm starting to think I might stay. He returned to the boarding house that afternoon to find Wilhelmina sitting in the small parlor, papers spread across her lap as she graded assignments. She looked up when he entered, and the smile that crossed her face sent that warm feeling through his chest again. "How did your business go?" she asked, setting aside her work. Nathan settled into the chair across from her, noting how the afternoon light caught in her dark hair, turning it almost blue-black. "I own a ranch now, apparently. 15 miles north of here. Going to need a lot of work to make it livable, but it's mine." "That's wonderful. Are you a skilled carpenter?" "I can swing a hammer without hitting my thumb most of the time." Nathan grinned at her laugh. "I've done repair work before. It'll keep me busy." Wilhelmina's smile faded slightly. "Then you'll be leaving Winnemucca soon." "Not necessarily. I was thinking I could ride out during the day to work on the place and come back here at night, at least for a while." He tried to keep his tone casual, but the way her eyes brightened told him she understood what he was really saying. "You do that, even though it means an hour's ride each way." "I've made longer rides for less important reasons." Nathan leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Besides, I made a promise. I intend to keep it." They fell into a routine over the following weeks that felt both strange and perfectly natural. Nathan would rise before dawn and ride north to his uncle's ranch, where he spent his days replacing rotted boards, fixing the roof, and repairing fence lines. The work was hard and honest, the kind that left him physically exhausted but mentally satisfied. He would return to Winnemucca as the sun began its descent toward the horizon, dusty and tired but already thinking about the evening ahead. After dinner at the boarding house, he and Wilhelmina would sit in the parlor talking until the other residents retired for the night. She told him about her students' progress, about how young Michael was finally grasping his multiplication tables, and how Sarah had written a composition so beautiful it had moved Wilhelmina to tears. Nathan shared stories about the ranch, about the family of rabbits living under the front porch and the hawk that had taken up residence in the barn's rafters. As the night grew late and the boarding house settled into silence, Nathan would take up his position in the hallway outside her room. Sometimes he sat against the wall as he had that first night. Other times, when the weather turned colder as September gave way to October, he would drag a chair from downstairs and wrap himself in multiple blankets. The nightmares came less frequently with him there, but they still came. Nathan learned to recognize the signs that preceded them. Wilhelmina's breathing would quicken, and she would begin to murmur in her sleep, words he could not quite distinguish, but which carried the unmistakable tone of fear. He would call to her softly through the cracked door, his voice a lifeline pulling her back from whatever flames consumed her dreams. "Wilhelmina, you're safe. It's just a dream. Come back." Sometimes his voice alone was enough. She would wake with a gasp, disoriented but not screaming, and he would talk to her until her breathing steadied and she could attempt sleep again. Other times, the terror had already taken hold and she would wake shrieking, thrashing in her sheets as if fighting off an attacker. Those nights, Nathan would push her door open wider and speak more urgently, though he never crossed the threshold uninvited. "You're in Winnemucca, Nevada. You're in the boarding house. There's no fire. You're safe." Gradually, she would surface from the nightmare, her eyes wild and unseeing at first before focusing on him in the doorway. Then would come the tears, the shaking aftermath as reality reasserted itself over the dream's horror. Nathan would remain in the doorway, hands gripping the frame to keep himself from rushing to comfort her physically, and he would keep talking. He told her about the sunrise that morning, about the progress he had made on the ranch, about anything and everything until the fear receded from her face. One night in mid-October, after a particularly bad episode, Wilhelmina finally asked the question he had been expecting. "Why are you really doing this, Nathan? And please don't tell me it's just kindness. Nobody is this selflessly kind." Nathan had asked himself the same question many times over the past 6 weeks. The answer had become clearer with each passing day, each shared conversation, each moment he spent in her presence. But admitting it felt dangerous, like stepping off a cliff without knowing if there was ground below or just empty air. "Because you matter to me," he said finally, his voice rough with honesty. "I know that probably sounds crazy considering we've only known each other a short time, but it's the truth. Somewhere between that first night and now, you became important to me. I want you to feel safe. I want you to sleep without terror. I want you to smile the way you do when one of your students succeeds at something difficult. I want to be the reason you feel protected instead of vulnerable." Wilhelmina stared at him from her bed, her hair tangled and her eyes red from crying, and Nathan thought he had never seen anyone more beautiful. "Nathan, I'm not whole. These dreams, this fear, it's part of me. It might never go away completely. I don't need you to be whole. I need you to be you." He tightened his grip on the door frame. "But I understand if this is too much, if my feelings make you uncomfortable. I can still keep watch without expecting anything in return. Your safety doesn't depend on you returning my affection." She was quiet for so long Nathan began to think he had ruined everything. Then she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "I think I've been falling in love with you since that first night. I tried not to. I told myself it was just gratitude, that I was confusing appreciation for something deeper. But Nathan, when I wake up afraid, yours is the voice I want to hear. When something good happens during my day, you're the person I want to tell. You've become essential to me, and that terrifies me almost as much as the dreams do." Nathan felt his heart hammering so hard he was certain she could hear it across the room. "Why does it terrify you?" "Because people leave. People die. My parents died. Timothy died. Everyone I've ever loved has been taken from me, and I don't think I could survive losing someone else." Her voice broke on the last words. "I don't think I could survive losing you." He wanted to promise her that he would never leave, that he would be here forever guarding her dreams and her waking hours alike. But he knew better than to make promises about things beyond his control. Death and disaster did not care about good intentions. Instead, he said, "I can't promise I'll never die, Wilhelmina. None of us get that guarantee, but I can promise that I'm not going anywhere by choice. And I can promise that however much time we get, I'll spend every moment of it making sure you know you're loved." She climbed out of bed then, crossing the small room in her bare feet, and for the first time, she stepped across the threshold to where he stood. Nathan released the door frame and took her hands in his, feeling how cold her fingers were, how delicate they seemed against his work-roughened palms. "I'm afraid," she whispered. "I know. But Wilhelmina, being afraid doesn't mean you can't also be brave. You've survived every night of terror so far. You've built a life despite carrying grief that would crush some people. That's not weakness, that's courage." He squeezed her hands gently. "Let me love you. Let yourself love me back. We'll face whatever comes together." She lifted one of his hands to her cheek, pressing his palm against her face as she closed her eyes. "Okay," she breathed. "Okay, yes, I want that, I want you." Nathan felt something tight in his chest finally release, like a knot coming undone. He pulled her closer, wrapping his arms around her, and she melted against him with a sigh that sounded like relief. They stood that way for a long moment, two people finding shelter in each other against the vast uncertainty of the world. "You should try to sleep again," Nathan finally murmured against her hair, which smelled faintly of lavender. "I'll be right here. Will you hold my hand?" The request was tentative, vulnerable in a way that made Nathan want to slay dragons for her. "Just until I fall asleep. I'll hold your hand all night if you want me to." They arranged themselves awkwardly at first, Wilhelmina in her bed and Nathan in the chair he pulled close to the bedside, their hands clasped between them. It was not particularly comfortable, but Nathan found he did not care. The trust she showed by letting him stay so close, by literally putting her hand in his, meant more than any physical comfort. She fell asleep within minutes, her breathing evening out into the gentle rhythm of rest. Nathan stayed awake, watching her face relax completely for the first time since he had met her. No nightmares came that night. When dawn broke and Wilhelmina woke naturally, her hand still held in his, the smile she gave him was radiant enough to make his night of lost sleep feel like a worthwhile trade. The next few weeks passed in a blur of work, conversation, and slowly deepening intimacy. Nathan made progress on the ranch house, transforming it from a neglected structure into something that was beginning to feel like a home. He found himself thinking about the future as he worked, imagining Wilhelmina in the kitchen he was repairing, picturing children running through the rooms he was making safe and solid. It felt presumptuous to dream so far ahead when they had not even kissed yet, but he could not help himself. She had taken up residence in his heart so completely that he could no longer imagine a future that did not include her. Their first kiss happened on a Sunday in late October, when Wilhelmina asked to see the ranch. Nathan saddled 2 horses from the town stable, and they rode out together in the crisp autumn morning, the aspens along the river burning gold in the sunlight. Wilhelmina was a competent rider, though she admitted she had not spent much time on horseback since leaving Ohio years ago. The ranch spread out before them as they crested a low rise, and Nathan felt a surge of pride at how much he had accomplished. The house looked sturdy and welcoming, the fresh wood he had used for repairs, not yet weathered to match the original structure but promising durability. The barn stood solid, and the corrals he had rebuilt would hold cattle when he eventually bought stock. "It's beautiful," Wilhelmina said, her eyes taking in the sweep of land and sky. "I can see why your uncle loved it here. I was hoping you might love it too." Nathan dismounted and helped her down from her horse, his hands lingering at her waist. "I know it's rough still, not fancy like places back east, but it could be a good home for the right people." Wilhelmina turned to face him fully, her expression serious. "Nathan Emerson, are you asking me something? Maybe, if you think you might want to hear it." His heart raced, but he pressed on. "I love you, Wilhelmina. I love the way you care about your students. I love your strength and your vulnerability. I love how you laugh and how you trust me with your fears. I want to build a life here, but I only want to do it if you're building it with me." She reached up to touch his face, her fingers tracing the line of his jaw. "I love you too, so much it scares me sometimes. But I'm done letting fear control my choices." "Yes, Nathan. Whatever you're asking, the answer is yes." He kissed her then, gently at first and then with growing passion as she responded. She tasted like the apples they had shared during the ride, sweet and crisp, and Nathan felt like he was finally, truly home. When they broke apart, both breathless, Wilhelmina was smiling so widely he could not help but smile back. "I should probably ask you properly," Nathan said, pulling back slightly. "Court you the way a lady deserves to be courted. take you to church socials and dances, let you get to know me better before making any permanent decisions. I already know you better than I've ever known anyone." Wilhelmina's voice was firm. "You've seen me at my absolute worst, Nathan. You've watched me wake up screaming and crying and terrified. You've held my hand through the darkest hours of the night. If you still love me after all that, then I think we've moved past the need for conventional courting. Then marry me." The words came out more urgent than Nathan had intended, but he meant them with his entire soul. "Marry me and live here with me. Help me turn this ranch into a home. Let me guard your dreams for the rest of our lives." Tears spilled down her cheeks, but she was laughing. "Yes. Yes. Of course, yes. There's nothing I want more." They were married 3 weeks later in Winnemucca's small church, with the boarding house proprietor and several of Wilhelmina's students' families standing as witnesses. Wilhelmina wore a simple blue dress she had sewn herself, and Nathan wore his best suit, the one he had brought west but never expected to use. The ceremony was brief and heartfelt, and when the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Nathan kissed her with a reverence that made several of the ladies in attendance dab at their eyes. The boarding house residents threw them a small reception afterward, with cake and punch and well wishes. Wilhelmina's students presented her with a bouquet of wildflowers they had gathered, and Nathan was touched to see how much these people had come to care for his wife in the short time she had lived among them. As the sun set and they prepared to ride out to the ranch together, one of the older women pulled Wilhelmina aside. Nathan watched from across the room as they spoke in low tones, seeing Wilhelmina's expression shift from embarrassment to something that looked like gratitude. When she rejoined him, she would not quite meet his eyes. "What was that about?" Nathan asked gently. "Mrs. Patterson wanted to make sure I knew what to expect tonight, on our wedding night." Wilhelmina's cheeks flushed pink. "I told her I was not completely ignorant, but she insisted on providing some advice anyway. It was mortifying." Nathan suppressed a smile. "And what advice did she give you?" "That you were a good man and I had nothing to fear. That intimacy between husband and wife is meant to be a comfort and a joy, not something to dread. And that if you did anything to frighten me, I should hit you with the iron skillet." Now Wilhelmina did meet his eyes, her own sparkling with amusement. "I assured her I did not think the skillet would be necessary." "I should hope not." Nathan took her hand, threading his fingers through hers. "Wilhelmina, we don't have to do anything tonight except sleep. There's no rush. I've waited this long to make you my wife. I can wait longer for anything else." She squeezed his hand. "I know you would wait. That's one of the many reasons I love you. But Nathan, I don't want to wait. I want to belong to you completely. I want us to truly be husband and wife in every way." The ride to the ranch seemed both endless and far too short. Nathan was acutely aware of Wilhelmina riding beside him, of the ring on her finger that marked her as his, of the future spreading out before them like the star-scattered sky overhead. When they arrived, he helped her down from her horse and carried her over the threshold, a gesture that made her laugh with delight. The house was not large, just 4 rooms that Nathan had cleaned and furnished as best he could. But he had made sure the bedroom was comfortable, with a real bed he had purchased in town and quilts his uncle's neighbor ladies had donated. A fire crackled in the small fireplace, warming the room against the October chill. Wilhelmina looked around, taking in the simple but clean space, then turned to him. "It's perfect. You've made it perfect." They came together slowly, learning each other through touch and whispered words. Nathan was gentle, mindful of her trust and her inexperience, determined to make this good for her despite his own nervousness. When she gasped and clung to him, he murmured reassurances, telling her she was beautiful and loved and safe. Afterward, They lay tangled together under the quilts, Wilhelmina's head resting on his chest as his fingers traced idle patterns on her shoulder. Nathan felt a contentment so deep it seemed to permeate his very bones. "Are you all right?" he asked softly. "I'm wonderful." Wilhelmina tilted her head to look up at him, her eyes soft in the firelight. "I feel safe, Nathan. For the first time in 15 years, I feel completely safe. You are safe. I've got you." He kissed her forehead, then her nose, then her lips. "Try to sleep, love. I'm right here." She settled against him with a sigh, and Nathan listened as her breathing gradually evened out. He stayed awake longer, one hand resting protectively on her back, ready to wake her if the nightmares came. But they did not come that night or the night after or the one after that. As days turned into weeks and weeks into months, Nathan noticed that Wilhelmina's night terrors grew less frequent and less severe. She still had bad nights occasionally, still woke gasping from dreams of fire and loss, but they no longer controlled her life. Sometimes a whole week would pass without incident, then 2 weeks, then 3. "I think you're getting better," Nathan said one morning as they lay in bed watching the sun rise through their bedroom window. Winter had arrived, bringing cold that made leaving their warm cocoon of blankets nearly impossible. Wilhelmina considered this, absently playing with the hair on his chest. "I think you might be right. The dreams still come, but they're different now, less consuming. And when I wake up, you're here, so even the fear doesn't last as long." "What changed, do you think?" "I don't know for certain. Maybe just feeling safe lets my mind relax enough to not constantly replay the trauma. Or maybe love really does heal wounds we thought were permanent." She propped herself up on one elbow to look at him. "Whatever the reason, I'm grateful. You gave me my sleep back, Nathan. You gave me my life back. You did the hard work yourself. I just kept watch. You did more than that." She kissed him softly. "You loved me when I was certain I was unlovable. You saw past the damaged, frightened parts to whatever was worth keeping. That gift is beyond measure." Nathan pulled her closer, overwhelmed by how much he loved this woman. "You were always worth keeping. Every single part of you." They spent that first winter establishing their rhythms as a married couple. Nathan worked the ranch, building up the herd he had started with money from selling cattle he had driven north. Wilhelmina continued teaching in Winnemucca, making the trip into town 3 days a week when weather permitted, staying with a teacher friend on those nights, and spending the rest of her time at the ranch with Nathan. It was not an easy life. The work was hard and the winters harsh, with snow piling high and temperatures dropping low enough to freeze water in the well. But they were happy in a way Nathan had not imagined was possible. He loved the domesticity of their evenings together, Wilhelmina reading by lamplight while he worked on tack or accounts. He loved waking up beside her every morning, her dark hair spread across the pillow, and her face peaceful in sleep. He loved the way she smiled when he came in from working outside, how she would rise to greet him even if he was covered in dust or snow. Spring brought new life to the ranch in multiple ways. The cattle Nathan had purchased began calving, adding to their herd and their future security. And Wilhelmina discovered she was carrying their first child. "I suspected a few weeks ago, but I wanted to be certain before telling you," she said one evening in April as they sat together on the porch watching the sunset. "Dr. Morrison confirmed it today when I was in town. He thinks the baby will come in October." Nathan felt like all the air had been knocked from his lungs. "A baby. We're having a baby. Are you happy?" Wilhelmina sounded uncertain, which Nathan could not understand because he was fairly certain he had never been happier in his entire life. He pulled her into his arms, holding her carefully as if she might break. "Happy doesn't even begin to cover it. Wilhelmina, You've already given me more than I ever dreamed of having. Now you're giving me a family. I don't have words for how that makes me feel." She relaxed against him. "I was worried you might think it was too soon. We've only been married 6 months. It's perfect timing. Everything about us is perfect, even when it's messy and difficult and nothing like what I planned." He placed his hand over her still flat belly, imagining the life growing there. "Is it strange that I love this baby already? Not strange at all. I've loved them since I first suspected their existence." Wilhelmina covered his hand with her own. "Nathan, I'm a little scared. What if I pass my night terrors on to our child? What if my brokenness becomes theirs? Then we'll love them through it, just like I love you through yours. And Wilhelmina, you're not broken. You're healing. There's a difference." He kissed her temple. "Besides, this child is going to have the most loving, patient, strong mother imaginable. That's worth more than a life without difficulties." The pregnancy progressed smoothly through spring and into summer. Wilhelmina continued teaching until the end of the school term in May, then focused her energy on preparing the ranch house for the baby's arrival. Nathan built a cradle from pine wood, sanding it until every surface was smooth as silk. Wilhelmina sewed tiny clothes and blankets, her hands creating something beautiful from simple cloth. Her night terrors had become rare enough that they were barely an issue anymore, though Nathan still held her every night as she slept, his hand resting protectively on her growing belly. The baby would kick sometimes, strong thumps that made them both laugh with wonder. "Active little thing," Nathan commented one night in August when the baby's movements were particularly vigorous. "Going to be a handful, I can tell already. Takes after their father, then." Wilhelmina smiled at his mock-offended expression. "Oh, don't even try to deny it. You're the most restless person I know. Always working on something, always in motion. I prefer to think of it as being productive. You can call it whatever you like. I still say this baby gets their energy from you." She guided his hand to a spot where the baby was pushing against her side. "Feel that? They're saying hello to their papa." Nathan felt his throat tighten with emotion. "Hello, little one. Can't wait to meet you." October arrived with aspen leaves turning gold and the air taking on the crisp bite of approaching winter. Wilhelmina had grown large with the pregnancy, moving more slowly, but still insisting on helping with daily tasks around the ranch. Nathan tried to get her to rest more, but she would just laugh and tell him she was pregnant, not an invalid. "Women have been having babies since the beginning of time while still working," she pointed out when he tried to stop her from hanging laundry. "I'm perfectly capable of managing light chores. I just want you to be comfortable and safe. I am both those things." "Nathan, you can't wrap me in cotton and keep me locked inside until the baby comes. I'll go mad with boredom." She stretched up to kiss his cheek. "I promise I'll tell you if I need to rest, but hovering over me every second isn't necessary." He tried to give her space, but it was difficult when all he wanted was to stay close and make sure nothing went wrong. The memory of her description of losing her family to fire, of her long years of suffering, made him almost desperate to protect her from any further pain. The night her labor started, Nathan was beside himself with worry, despite the midwife's assurances that everything was progressing normally. Mrs. Chen had delivered dozens of babies in the Winnemucca area and came highly recommended, but Nathan still paced the main room of the ranch house like a caged animal while Wilhelmina labored in the bedroom. "You're going to wear a hole in the floor," Mrs. Chen said when she emerged for more hot water. "Your wife is doing beautifully, strong as an ox, that one. Baby should be here within a few hours. Can I see her? Better to let her focus on the work right now. You can come in when it's time to meet your child." She patted his arm kindly. "First babies take time, try to relax." Relaxing was impossible. Nathan had faced down wild steers, broken difficult horses, survived harsh winters, but nothing had prepared him for the helpless terror of knowing Wilhelmina was in pain, and there was nothing he could do to ease it. When he heard her cry out, he nearly broke down the bedroom door before catching himself. Finally, just as the sun was beginning to rise, he heard the most beautiful sound in the world, a baby's lusty cry. Nathan was across the room and through the door before Mrs. Chen could call for him, his eyes immediately finding Wilhelmina on the bed, exhausted but smiling. "Come meet your son," she said, her voice hoarse but full of joy. Nathan approached slowly, almost afraid to believe it was real. Mrs. Chen placed a small bundle in his arms, and Nathan looked down at a tiny red face scrunched up in displeasure at being born. The baby had a shock of dark hair, and when he briefly opened his eyes, they were the same pale blue as his mother's. "A son," Nathan breathed, feeling tears stream down his face without shame. "We have a son." "What should we name him?" Wilhelmina asked, reaching out to touch the baby's tiny hand. Nathan had thought about names throughout the pregnancy, but somehow none of them felt right in this moment. Then inspiration struck. "Timothy, after your brother, if that's all right with you." Wilhelmina's eyes filled with tears. "Really, really, he should be remembered, and maybe in some small way this helps heal that old wound." Nathan carefully transferred the baby to Wilhelmina's arms, then sat on the edge of the bed beside them. "Timothy Harper Emerson, our son." "Our son," Wilhelmina repeated, gazing at the baby with such love it made Nathan's heart ache. "Nathan, he's perfect, absolutely perfect." Timothy was indeed perfect, at least in his parents' admittedly biased opinion. He was a good baby, settling into a routine quickly and sleeping for reasonable stretches at night. When he did wake crying, Nathan would bring him to Wilhelmina to nurse, then walk him around the house afterward, talking to him in a low voice about the ranch and the cattle, and all the things they would do together when Timothy was older. "You're going to love it here," Nathan whispered one night as he paced with his son against his shoulder. "Wide open spaces to run in, horses to ride, a mother who will love you fierce enough to move mountains. You're the luckiest boy in the world, Timothy." The baby made a small sound that might have been agreement or might have been gas, but Nathan chose to believe it was agreement. Wilhelmina recovered quickly from the birth, though Nathan insisted she take it easy for several weeks. He hired a young woman from town to come help with household chores so Wilhelmina could focus on the baby and on resting. As fall deepened toward winter, they settled into their new life as parents with surprising ease. "I keep waiting for it to get harder," Wilhelmina said one evening as they sat together by the fire, Timothy asleep in his cradle nearby. "Everyone warned me about how difficult babies are, but honestly, he's been wonderful. That's because he knows he has the best mother in Nevada." Nathan pulled her closer, tucking her against his side. "And because we're lucky. I won't pretend all nights will be this peaceful, but right now, I'm just grateful." "I haven't had a night terror since he was born," Wilhelmina said thoughtfully. "I wonder if that's temporary or permanent." "Either way, I'll be here if they come back, but I hope for your sake they stay away. You've earned some peace, Wilhelmina." She tilted her head to look up at him. "I have peace. Right here, right now, with you and our son. This is more than I ever imagined having. Some nights I lie awake just listening to you both breathe, and I feel so full of gratitude I could burst." Nathan kissed her forehead, her temple, her cheek. "I love you, more than the day I married you, more than the day you agreed to spend your life with me. Every day I love you more. And I love you, my dream guardian, my husband, the father of my child." She kissed him properly then, soft and sweet and full of promise. Thank you for not giving up on me that first night. Thank you for seeing something worth saving. I didn't save you, Wilhelmina. You saved yourself. I just kept watch while you did it. The years that followed were filled with the ordinary magic of a life well lived. Timothy grew into a sturdy toddler, then a curious boy who followed his father everywhere and adored his mother with single-minded devotion. The ranch prospered as Nathan's careful management and hard work paid off. Wilhelmina returned to teaching part-time when Timothy was 3, and the community came to regard the Emerson family as pillars of the growing town. 3 years after Timothy's birth, Wilhelmina delivered a daughter they named Josephine, who had her father's brown hair and a temperament that could only be described as fierce. She kept them on their toes in ways Timothy never had, climbing everything and exploring constantly. Nathan joked that she would either become a famous explorer or give them all heart attacks before she turned 5. 2 years later came another boy, Samuel, who was quiet and thoughtful, content to sit with his mother and look at books while his siblings created chaos around him. And finally, when Wilhelmina was 31 and Nathan 33, they welcomed twin girls, Margaret and Louise, who seemed determined to prove that 2 babies were exponentially more challenging than 1. Through it all, through sleepless nights and childhood illnesses, and the endless work of raising a family while running a ranch, Nathan and Wilhelmina's love only deepened. They had their disagreements, of course. Living closely with another person inevitably led to friction. But they had learned early to talk through their problems rather than letting resentment build, to apologize when they were wrong and forgive when they were hurt. Wilhelmina's night terrors never fully disappeared, though they became less frequent over the years. Every few months, she would wake gasping from dreams of fire, and Nathan would be there immediately, pulling her close and whispering reassurances until the fear faded. After nearly 2 decades together, he knew exactly what she needed: his steady presence, his calm voice, his unwavering love. "Still guarding my dreams," she said one night after he had talked her down from a particularly vivid nightmare. The twins were 5 years old now, sleeping soundly in the room they shared, and the house was peaceful around them, always. Nathan smoothed her hair back from her face. "That was the promise, forever. I don't know what I did to deserve you. You let me love you, that's all it took." He settled her against his chest, her head over his heart. "Go back to sleep, love, I've got you." As the 1890s progressed, Winnemucca continued to grow, and the Emerson Ranch became one of the most successful in the area. Nathan's reputation for honest dealing and quality cattle spread, and he found himself consulting with other ranchers on breeding and land management. Wilhelmina expanded her teaching, eventually becoming the head teacher at the enlarged schoolhouse, mentoring younger teachers and developing curriculum that prepared their students for futures beyond the ranch and farm. Their children thrived in the Nevada landscape. Timothy, now 16, worked the ranch alongside his father and showed every sign of taking it over someday. Josephine, 13 and still fierce, announced her intention to become a doctor, much to everyone's surprise except her mother's. Samuel, 11, loved school almost as much as Wilhelmina did and talked about becoming a teacher himself. The twins were tornado forces of energy who kept everyone entertained and occasionally exasperated. One evening in late spring of 1899, Nathan and Wilhelmina escaped the chaos of their full house to sit on the porch and watch the sunset. It was a ritual they had maintained over the years, whenever possible. This quiet time together to reconnect and simply be a couple rather than parents. "Do you ever think about that first night?" Wilhelmina asked, her hand clasped in his. "When you heard me scream and decided to knock on my door?" "Sometimes. I wonder what would have happened if I had just gone back to bed, if I had minded my own business like a sensible person." Nathan squeezed her hand gently. "I'm grateful I didn't. So am I. My whole life changed because you were kind to a stranger, because you offered to help when you had no reason to care." She leaned her head against his shoulder. "Sometimes I still can't believe this is my life. This ranch, these children, it seems too good to be real. It's real. We built it together one day at a time." Nathan thought about all those days, all those years of work and love and commitment. "No regrets, Wilhelmina, not a single one. Do you have any?" "Only that I didn't find you sooner. But then again, maybe we found each other exactly when we were meant to." He kissed the top of her head. "I'd do it all again, every moment. The sleepless nights in the hallway, the long rides from the ranch to town and back, all of it. You're worth everything." From inside the house came a crash followed by shouting, and both of them sighed. The twins, no doubt, getting into something they should not. "I should go check on that," Wilhelmina said, but she made no move to stand. "Give it a minute. Timothy can handle it." Nathan pulled her closer. "I want one more moment of peace with my wife before returning to the chaos." "Our beautiful chaos," Wilhelmina smiled. "I wouldn't trade it for anything. Neither would I." They sat together as the sun painted the sky in shades of orange and pink, the land they had built their life on spreading out before them in rolling waves of sagebrush and grass. The Humboldt Mountains rose in the distance, purple shadows against the darkening sky. Somewhere a coyote called, and from the barn came the soft nickering of horses settling for the night. It was not a perfect life. There were still hard days and difficult moments, still nights when Wilhelmina woke afraid and mornings when Nathan's back ached from years of ranch work. But it was their life, built on a foundation of trust and love that had started with a scream in the night and a stranger's decision to care. As they finally rose to deal with whatever destruction the twins had wrought, Nathan caught Wilhelmina's hand and pulled her back for one more kiss. She came willingly, smiling against his lips, and he thought not for the first time how lucky he was. How miraculous it was that they had found each other in a small Nevada town, two damaged people who had somehow become whole together. "I love you," he said, simple words that carried the weight of 17 years of partnership. "I love you too. Now and forever, dream guardian." Wilhelmina kissed him once more, quick and sweet. "Come on, we have children to rescue and a house to save from destruction." They walked inside together, hand in hand, ready to face whatever came next the same way they had faced everything else. Together. The years continued to unfold with their mixture of joy and challenge. Timothy married at 22 and brought his bride, a sweet-natured young woman named Catherine, to live at the ranch. They built a small house on the property, close enough to help with the work but far enough to have their own space. Within a year, they made Nathan and Wilhelmina grandparents for the first time. A grandson they named Michael, who had Timothy's dark hair and serious expression. Holding his grandson for the first time, Nathan felt the circle of his life complete in a way he had not expected. This small person represented the future, the continuation of everything he and Wilhelmina had built. When he looked up and saw his wife watching him with tears in her eyes, he knew she felt it too. Josephine did indeed pursue medicine, leaving for San Francisco at 18 to attend a women's medical college. It was hard to let her go, but both Nathan and Wilhelmina supported her dreams fiercely. She wrote home regularly, her letters full of enthusiasm for her studies and determination to return to Nevada to serve the communities there. Samuel became a teacher as he had always planned, taking over some of Wilhelmina's responsibilities at the school as she gradually reduced her hours. The twins, now young women of 17, were both courting local boys and planning their futures with the earnest intensity of youth. Nathan was 48 now, his brown hair shot through with silver, his face weathered by decades of sun and wind. Wilhelmina had turned 46 in the spring, and though age had added lines around her eyes and a touch of gray to her dark hair, Nathan thought she had never been more beautiful. The girl he had met 20 years ago had been fragile in her exhaustion and fear. The woman beside him now was strong, confident, beloved by her community and secure in her place in the world. Her night terrors came only rarely now, perhaps once or twice a year, and even then, they had lost much of their power. She would wake confused rather than terrified, and Nathan's presence was enough to ground her quickly. "You think they'll ever stop completely?" she asked one morning after a rare nightmare had disrupted her sleep. They were alone in the house for once, the children all occupied elsewhere and were taking advantage of the peace to linger in bed. "I don't know. Does it matter?" Nathan traced the curve of her cheek with his finger. "They're part of your story, Wilhelmina, part of what made you who you are. I'm not sure I'd want them gone if it meant erasing the experiences that shaped you. Even the painful ones, especially those. Pain teaches us compassion. Loss teaches us to value what we have. Your struggles made you the mother our children needed, the teacher your students needed, the wife I needed. Would I take away your suffering if I could? In a heartbeat. But I can't, so instead, I choose to be grateful for the person that suffering created." He kissed her softly. "Does that make sense?" "Perfect sense." Wilhelmina settled against him with a contented sigh. 20 years, Nathan. 20 years since you sat in that hallway and promised to guard my dreams. How did we get so lucky? I ask myself that every day. He held her close, breathing in the familiar scent of her hair, feeling the comfortable weight of her body against his. "And every day I'm grateful I heard you scream that night, grateful I cared enough to knock, grateful you let me in. Best decision I ever made." They drifted back to sleep for a while, comfortable in each other's presence in a way only decades of intimacy could create. When they finally rose to face the day, it was with the easy coordination of long practice, moving around each other in the bedroom and kitchen as they dressed and prepared breakfast. The morning sun streamed through the kitchen windows, illuminating the photographs Wilhelmina had arranged on one wall. Their children at various ages, the ranch in different seasons, Nathan and Wilhelmina on their wedding day looking impossibly young. It was a record of a life fully lived, of love given and received, of a family built despite the odds. As Nathan sat at the table watching his wife move around their kitchen, humming softly to herself as she worked, he felt a profound sense of peace. This was what he had been searching for all those years ago when he drove cattle north into Nevada. Not just land or success or even love in the abstract, but this specific woman, this specific life, these specific moments of ordinary magic. "What are you thinking about?" Wilhelmina asked, catching him staring. "Just how happy I am, how grateful." Nathan reached out and caught her hand as she passed, pulling her to stand between his knees. "How much I love you." She cupped his face in her hands, her blue eyes soft. "I love you too. Thank you for all of it, Nathan. Thank you for that first night and every night since. Thank you for being the kind of man who hears a stranger crying and decides to help. Thank you for being you." He pulled her down for a kiss that tasted like coffee and contentment, like 20 years of mornings together and the promise of many more to come. When they broke apart, both were smiling. Outside, the ranch was waking up for the day. They could hear Timothy calling to the ranch hands, the lowing of cattle, the dogs barking their enthusiasm for breakfast. Soon the house would fill with family again, children and grandchildren bringing their noise and energy and love. But for this moment, it was just the two of them, Nathan and Wilhelmina Emerson, two people who had found each other in the darkness and built something beautiful in the light. "Ready to face the day?" Nathan asked, standing and wrapping his arm around her waist. "With you, always." Wilhelmina leaned into him, solid and real and his. "Let's go, Dream Guardian. Our family awaits." They walked out into the morning together, hand in hand, partners in every sense of the word. Behind them, the house stood solid and welcoming, full of memories and love. Before them, the land stretched toward distant mountains under a sky so blue it hurt to look at it. This was home. This was happiness. This was the life they had chosen and built together, one day at a time, one night at a time, one dream at a time, and it was enough. More than enough. It was everything. As the years turned toward a new century, the Emerson family continued to grow and thrive. Nathan and Wilhelmina became fixtures in the Winnemucca community, respected for their integrity and loved for their kindness. They had created not just a successful ranch, but a legacy of love and service that would continue through their children and grandchildren. On their 25th wedding anniversary, their children threw them a celebration that brought together friends and family from across Nevada. As Nathan looked around at the assembled crowd, at his children and grandchildren, at his wife standing beside him with tears of joy streaming down her face, he thought back to that night so long ago. He had been just a cowboy passing through, she just a terrified woman unable to escape her nightmares. Neither of them could have imagined this future as they sat on opposite sides of a doorway, strangers bound by nothing but kindness and desperation. But they had taken a chance. They had chosen to trust, to love, to build something together despite their fears and uncertainties. And in doing so, they had created something beautiful and lasting, something that would outlive them both. "What are you thinking?" Wilhelmina asked, echoing a question she had asked countless times over the years. "That I heard you scream one night, and it changed my entire life." Nathan pulled her close, uncaring that they had an audience. "That I promised to guard your dreams, and you let me. That somehow, miraculously, we found each other in the darkness and made it to this moment. No regrets," she asked as she had asked before. "Not a single one." Nathan kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. "I'd do it all again in a heartbeat." Every moment, every challenge, every beautiful, ordinary day. "With you, Wilhelmina. Always with you." Around them, their family cheered and clapped, celebrating a love that had started in terror and grown into something unshakable. The evening sun cast golden light across the gathering, illuminating faces young and old, all connected by the bonds of family and love. As the party continued into the night, Nathan and Wilhelmina slipped away for a moment of quiet. They stood on the porch of the ranch house, looking out at the land they had claimed and shaped, at the life they had built together. 25 years, Wilhelmina marveled. "It feels like forever and no time at all." "I know exactly what you mean." Nathan wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on top of her head. "And here's to 25 more, Dream Guardian to Dream Guardian." She laughed, turning in his embrace to face him. "You're my dream guardian too, you know. You guard my waking hours as surely as you guard my sleeping ones. You make me feel safe in ways I didn't know were possible. That's my job, my privilege, my joy." Nathan kissed her once more, pouring all his love and devotion into the gesture. "Now and forever, Wilhelmina," that was the promise. "Now and forever," she agreed. And they stood together as stars emerged overhead, as the sounds of celebration drifted from inside the house, as another day gave way to night on their Nevada ranch. And when they finally went to bed that night, Nathan held Wilhelmina as she slept, his hand resting over her heart, feeling its steady rhythm. No nightmares came. She slept peacefully through the night, safe in the knowledge that she was loved, protected, cherished. Just as she had every night for 25 years, just as she would for all the years to come, the promise had been kept. The dreams were guarded, and love, as it turned out, was the most powerful guardian of all.